Lisbon enters the office with a serious expression and an obvious sense of urgency, carrying an email that had been sent directly to the governor's office and the attorney general. In the message, someone calling himself Joe Q. Public promised that an arrogant and greedy person would die at specific coordinates, in the middle of the Mojave Desert, at an exact time. The case had reached them because someone had leaked the message, and the governor wanted the team to personally handle it. There was no room for mistakes. Jane, far from looking concerned, seemed strangely excited. The desert at that time of year seemed like a perfect place to him, almost magical, and the idea of an unexpected trip immediately put him in a good mood. So much so that he suggested turning the mission into some kind of picnic. While Lisbon organized everything with her usual seriousness, Van Pelt stayed behind answering phones and gathering information. Guided by the GPS, the team traveled across the endless stretch of sand and rock until they reached the exact location with barely 15 seconds to spare. The wind blew softly, the sun beat down, and the silence was almost complete. When the time came, Lisbon decided there was nothing more to do and suggested leaving, but Jane insisted they wait a little longer. He had sandwiches ready and an almost childish faith that something would happen. Just moments later, a dull sound broke the silence, first a distant roar, then a hard impact against the ground. A body fell from the sky right in front of them, making it clear that the threat had been real. The victim turned out to be David Whitaker, Vice President of Human Resources at Carnelian Inc., who had been taking part in a corporate outdoor adventure retreat. A skydiving specialist informed them that the equipment had been tampered with. He had personally checked the parachute the night before, and it had been in perfect condition, but during the early morning hours, all the equipment had been stored inside an unlocked hangar, meaning anyone could have sabotaged it. Among the executives at the retreat was Randolph Falk, CEO of the private investment company that controlled Carnelian, a man Lisbon immediately disliked because of his arrogant attitude and his constant attempts to escape the investigation. He tried to leave without permission, but Lisbon stopped him and made it clear who was in charge. After asserting her authority, she finally let him go, although her suspicion of him had already taken root. Soon afterward, Van Pelt called Lisbon with disturbing news that was being broadcast on television. The team immediately went to Fox residence, where the screens showed another message from the same sender, Joe Q, declaring that he had already demonstrated his power and would do it again unless Carnelian issued a public apology. Far from being intimidated, Falk refused to cancel the corporate retreat, claiming that this was the moment to show strength and leadership. Jane looked at everyone present and explained that the killer had not chosen a specific victim. Anyone there, as long as they fit the category of arrogant and greedy, would have been enough. Faced with this, the executives handed over a list of everyone who had ever filed formal complaints, lawsuits, or serious disputes against the company. Van Pelt cross-referenced the information with the airfield records. One name immediately stood out: Lee Skelling. Rigsby and Cho went to his house to arrest him, but when they arrived, they found a tense situation. Skelling's young son, terrified, was pointing a shotgun at them. Lee himself managed to calm him down with reassuring words before surrendering, making it clear that he had no intention of resisting. Back at the office, Cho read a letter Skelling had sent to Carnelian 2 years earlier, filled with insults and accusations. In it, he claimed that the company had stolen his idea, a ventilation duct system for commercial airplanes that had saved the company enormous amounts of money. They had promised him a $50,000 bonus, but after Carnelian bought his company, that payment was canceled. He tried to sue them, but the case went nowhere. Jane and Lisbon visited Jessie, Skelling's wife. Jane assured her that if her husband was innocent, they would prove it. She firmly insisted that Leigh could not have done something like that. When Jane pressed her about how she could be so certain, Jessie removed her wig, revealing a head with almost no hair. She was seriously ill and dying, and she was convinced that her husband would never lie to someone in her condition or risk leaving their children alone. Back at the office, Cho questioned Skelling. He admitted that he had been working the previous night and had access to the hangar, but he firmly denied touching the parachute. He claimed he did not even know Carnelian's team was there. He had served in the Army Rangers and said he would rather face an enemy directly than kill someone in such a cowardly way. To him, sabotaging a parachute was not an act of justice, but an act of cowardice. Jane also spoke with him and discovered an even more painful background. When he worked for the aerospace company, his wife had much better medical coverage. If he had stayed quiet, if he had never spoken out, he would still have his job and Jesse would be receiving proper treatment. He admitted that if he could get away with it, he would be capable of killing them all, but he knew that no one goes after the rich without paying a terrible price. Lisbon, with a mixture of irony and resignation, commented that she could already read Jane's mind. She knew he firmly believed Skelling was innocent. After a few seconds of thought, she ordered that he be released. Jane did not want to consider the matter finished. He insisted on questioning the Carnelian executives again. He said he wanted to throw a cat among the pigeons, although he admitted that he did not even know what he was looking for, making it a completely blind cat. The return to the corporate retreat brought them back to that isolated environment, where the executives remained gathered inside a rustic barn, surrounded by desert dust and a tense calm that seemed to hide more than it revealed. Jane carefully watched every gesture, every glance, every tiny reaction, and soon noticed an old ranch hand working at the property, moving naturally among the high-ranking executives as if he were simply part of the scenery. With the same casual manner he used to dismantle any situation, Jane began throwing accusations into the air, describing hidden resentments, poorly concealed jealousy, and internal tensions hanging over the group like a thick cloud. He pointed to Joyce as a center of contained anger, suggested that Mike Sproul secretly despised Falk, and casually revealed that Falk was having a sexual relationship with Nadia Sobel, creating an uncomfortable silence and several uneasy looks. Falk, visibly annoyed, ordered Nadia not to say another word. Lisbon, realizing that the situation was about to spiral out of control, decided it was better to leave before causing an even bigger disaster. On the way back, they stop at a small fruit stand beside the road. Under the desert sun, surrounded by boxes of oranges and melons, they talk about the supposed benefits of corporate retreats. Lisbon comments that perhaps Jane could use one himself to learn how to trust other people. With a crooked smile, she points out that even she does not completely trust him, reminding him how many times he has deceived, manipulated, or led her down the wrong path. Jane responds by suggesting an improvised trust exercise, a backward fall. After a brief hesitation, Lisbon agrees and lets herself fall stiffly backward. Jane catches her just in time, holding her firmly and keeping his promise, leaving her with a mixture of relief and annoyance. The 3-hour drive back passes in an almost suspicious calm. When they arrive at the office, Van Pelt greets them with another message from Joe Q. Public. This time, the threat is even more disturbing. It announces that the king of the rats will meet his end. Jane reacts immediately, convinced that someone has planted a bomb to kill Falk. The scene moves to the businessman's bedroom, where he is sleeping soundly, unaware that beneath his bed, a device is silently counting down. Jane and Lisbon rush into the room and wake him urgently. Jane spots the explosive almost immediately, and Lisbon has to warn him not to enjoy being right. They manage to get Falk out of the bedroom, just in time while the timer continues counting down relentlessly. However, when the clock reaches 0, nothing happens. Silence takes over the room again, leaving behind a strange feeling, as if everything had been some kind of gruesome rehearsal. The next day, a bomb technician confirms that it was a real device, made with military-grade materials and built by someone with extensive technical knowledge. A single improperly placed wire had prevented the explosion, suggesting both a high level of skill and the possibility that the intention had been something other than killing. Jane and Lisbon visit the Skelling home. Jesse explains that her husband has disappeared because he knew all the suspicion would fall on him. Jane concludes that he has taken refuge in the mountains, a place he knows well. Jesse confirms that Lai owns a hunting rifle. Lisbon regrets letting him go, although Jane remains convinced that he is innocent. Meanwhile, Falk makes a public statement assuring everyone that Carnelian will overcome the crisis. The stock market does not agree. The company's shares fall 15% and continue dropping. Jane wonders aloud whether someone could be taking advantage of the situation by making money betting against the company. Van Pelt checks the trading records and discovers an account whose transactions match the exact timeline of the attacks. The trail leads directly to NS Holdings, owned by Nadia Sobel. Cho and Van Pelt return to the retreat to question the group again. They discover that almost everyone is taking part in an intense paintball session across the ranch grounds. In the middle of the game, Nadia manages to hit Deshawn with a burst of paint, celebrating her victory only seconds before she is hit herself. Except this time, it is not paint. The shots are real. Nadia falls to the ground, dead. The team gathers again inside the barn, with the atmosphere filled with tension, guilt, and fear. Skelling has been seen in the area, strengthening the suspicions against him. Lisbon cannot help thinking that they have made fools of themselves by releasing their main suspect just before a second murder. Jane, however, senses that this death changes the entire game. He is convinced they will not receive any more messages from Joe Q. Public. He observes that Whitaker's death was random, simply a means to an end, while Nadia's death was clearly planned. He still does not fully understand what that means, but he feels that the key to the case is hidden right there, somewhere between those two events. Jane and Lisbon leave to speak with Falk and Deshawn. Jane carries a bag with him. When Lisbon asks what is inside, he first suggests that it is food, one last improvised picnic, and then admits that it is a bomb, although he says it with such a casual tone that it is impossible to tell whether he is serious or not. Their return to the ranch feels different, heavier, as if the air itself is warning them that everything is about to be resolved. Jane and Lisbon walk toward the barn where Falk and Deshawn are waiting, while dust rises gently beneath their feet. Jane carries the bag over his shoulder, swinging it casually as if it contained nothing dangerous. Inside, the executives gather in an attempt to repair the company's image, while the old ranch hand, Jake, approaches to report that the vehicles are ready to leave. Falk, visibly shaken by the media pressure and the chaos caused by the murders, decides to make a public apology. He admits that remaining at the retreat was a mistake and announces that Carnelian will be reborn as an ethical, transparent company committed to justice. Joyce enthusiastically supports the idea, seeing it as the perfect opportunity to clean up the company's image. Jane, with a slight smile, agrees that it is a brilliant move, one capable of turning a catastrophe into a redemption story that the public will quickly embrace. At that moment, Rigsby interrupts with a crucial piece of information. The bullet that killed Nadia matches one from an old shooting competition, which Jake, the ranch hand, won years earlier. The revelation creates an immediate silence. Every eye turns toward the man, who remains motionless, his face hardened by surprise. Jane does not seem particularly shocked. Calmly, he begins insisting that forensic evidence does not lie, and that a bullet this specific could not point to anyone else. Falk, however, passionately defends Jake, insisting that he is an honest man, someone he has trusted for 6 years, and who would never be capable of something like this. Jane then suggests that Falk can help clear things up by speaking with Jake privately. Lisbon feels uncomfortable with the idea, but Jane asks her to wait outside, ready to intervene if anything goes wrong. Inside the barn, Jane begins pressuring Jake, wondering aloud why he would have killed these people and why he would have carried out such an elaborate chain of events. Falk, confused, demands to know what reason someone like Jake could possibly have to hate them that much. Jane continues pointing to Jake as the culprit, and to strengthen his accusation, pulls a bomb from the bag, claiming that Jake built it as well. Jake looks at it in confusion, clearly not recognizing it. That is when Falk suddenly shows obvious nervousness. When Jane activates the timer and the sound of the ticking fills the silence, Falk immediately reacts, lunging toward the device and disarming it with precise movements. Jane watches with a mixture of irony and satisfaction. Falk tries to justify himself, claiming that he simply had a hunch, but Jane resets the bomb, and once again Falk neutralizes it with the same skill. Jane then reveals that the explosive was filled only with modeling clay, and that the entire thing was a setup. The real bomb had been built by Falk to divert suspicion and keep the Joe Q Public story alive. Cornered, Falk tries to remain calm, arguing that there is no legal evidence that can convict him. Jane does not deny it. For him, knowing that he is right is enough. At that moment, Lisbon enters and places handcuffs on Falk, formally arresting him. At the police station, Jane explains how he knew from the beginning. When the bomb beneath Falk's bed failed to explode, he he realized that the entire thing had been staged. Whitaker's death had been a necessary sacrifice, a smokescreen designed to hide the real target, Nadia Sobel. She had been planning to leave the company and join a competitor, while also preparing to file a sexual harassment lawsuit and make money by betting against the falling stock price. Her death was essential to protecting Fox Empire. Cho provides a decisive document, a sworn statement from Nadia's attorney confirming the negotiations with the rival company and the imminent lawsuit. Everything falls into place. Jane cannot help admiring the intelligence of the plan. The public loves a triumphant comeback, and Fox had come dangerously close to achieving one. Jane proposes a deal. Involuntary manslaughter for Whitaker's death, no additional charges for the bombing attempt, and a guarantee that Fox will avoid the death penalty. Defeated, Fox asks what he gets in return. The final scene shows the Skelling family opening an envelope. Inside is a $500,000 check signed by Fox. It is a late compensation, an attempt to repair part of the damage he caused, and perhaps also a way to close the circle on a story defined by greed, revenge, and imperfect justice. If you enjoyed this episode, don't stop here. Head over to my channel and check out the complete playlist of The Mentalist, with every episode organized in order from beginning to end. Watch the full series, follow Patrick Jane's journey, and discover all the hidden details, mysteries, and secrets along the way. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more.